he was very disciplined, and it was before the Blues Brothers, but I think it was the next year he had the #1 hit TV show with Saturday Night Live, the #1 hit movie with Animal House. This is '78, and then the Blues Brothers album was the #1 album. So I mean, it was this amazing amount of success, just popularity, and I think it kind of crushed him.
Hi, I'm Rob Word, and I am damn glad to meet you because we've got somebody who's just written a phenomenal autobiography. He told everything. And he's right here. It's Tim Matheson. I'm damn glad to see you,
glad
pal.
to meet you. Good to see you, Rob.
Good to see you, too. Well, I'm glad you're here.
I didn't tell everything. There are certain things that we'll talk about Dick Zyker. We left a lot of stuff.
Well, that means there's a sequel coming out then, right?
Could be.
Okay.
Could be.
Terrific. Every time I turn my iPhone on in the morning, here you are talking to me about some special thing, some chapter in the book, and you're showing up someplace to talk about it. How's that selling going?
Good. We're doing great, and the response has been tremendous. People really enjoy the book, and it's a lot of fun, and it's for a lot of different audiences. I mean, it sort of recounts a part of my life when I was a kid, and I was fortunate enough to work with like Lucille Ball and Jackie Gleason, people from the golden age of American cinema, and before a lot of contemporary people are born or even realize that's going on, that started in vaudeville, and I got a chance to work with them and learn what that discipline was like and how it affected their careers and their acting, and I try to pass that information on.
Well, you do a terrific job in it and make it fun too. I mean, there are a lot of ups and downs that you go through. It's a sustained career, which is so unusual in this business, to be able to say you're still at the top of your game. And you've reinvented yourself a couple of times, and every time, well, maybe not every time, but it works most of the time.
Well, I discovered it there were these segments of my career, it was about every 7 years or so, that I had to either one part of my career just stopped and I had to shift gears and go in another direction, or it just sort of evolved into that, and I think that's sort of the trick to staying current, is just don't hold on to anything. I mean, I did Westerns for 7 years or so.
That's why you're here.
Yes, that's right. and cartoons for 2 or 3 years at Hanna-Barbera with Johnny Quest, and then I studied with the Groundlings. We helped create the Groundlings, and I got trained in improv and learned how to do comedy, and got into Animal House and Fletch and all that. So each segment was sort of a life of its own.
You need to be open to those changes and shifts in your career, though, and obviously you were. What was it that drove you to love the entertainment business so much?
I don't know. I mean, it always felt like a good, safe place for me. I've never felt more comfortable than when I'm on a set, and it's just the ability to use your imagination to recreate a situation and step outside yourself maybe and become another character, or become a person that lets you use a part of your own personality that you don't normally get in touch with. So it's kind of therapy. It's kind of fun, and I realized too that I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I'm one of those few. It's like an old Midwest story. I mean, born and raised and still working here. You know what I mean? It's like I still work in Burbank. I went junior and senior high school in Burbank, and the studios are still in Burbank. So it's
luckily they're still in Burbank.
Yes, yeah, fortunately.
No, like me, you grew up watching a lot of television. You were, before the term, I think, a latchkey kid.
Yeah, right.
Growing up watching TV, what were some of the earliest shows you remember on TV?
Oh my gosh, it was, here in LA it was KTLA, and Spade Cooley Show, and country western music, and Beanie and Cecil.
The live version.
The live version, which was Stan Freberg. So I got in touch with sort of comedy early on, and Stan Freberg was a genius, a voice genius and a comedic genius as well.
Well, I had a friend, Bob Clampett, who created Beanie and Cecil.
Bob Clampett, yes.
Bob and Sodi were dear friends.
Right.
And he was a funny guy. I remember one time, I was new out here. I didn't move out here until the end of '78, but I had met Bob earlier. And we went to the screening at the Motion Picture Academy. And I'm just this shy guy. I'm going, wow, look at all these stars around here. And I'm having a great time. And Bob, the movie's over, and Bob sees, we're like 5 rows back from the front row, and he sees Michael York stand up. And I go, yeah, there's Michael York. And Bob, throwing his voice, you wouldn't know where it came from. He goes, Yorkie, Yorkie. And Michael York's looking around like this, and Bob just is pretending to talk to me, and it was I'm going, I love this town.
Oh my God.
He was brilliant. And just, you look at those cartoons that he did with Tweety and Bugs and everything, and they were irascible, just like Bob was.
Well, those guys who I worked with who did all the voice work, Mel Blanc and Don Messick and Janet Waldo and June Foray. I mean,
now, how did you get involved to do the voice of Johnny Quest? That was your first cartoon voice, wasn't it?
Right. And it was the end of the first segment of my career I was a sort of a young kid actor. I did Leave It to Beaver, My Three Sons, and stuff.
You were shorter than the Beaver at that time.
Oh yeah, I was a tiny little kid. And then I kind of grew, and I became a teenager, kind of a gawky teenager. So that segment of my career came to an end. I mean, you couldn't play those parts anymore. So I just went to an audition at Hanna-Barbera, Joe Barbera, and he wanted kind of a voice that was not a big cartoon voice, but was kind of more reality based. And I got lucky, and I got cast in that. And so I spent my growing up time there, 15, 16, 17, working with Joe Barbera and all the animation stuff, Johnny Quest and Space Ghost.
And did Joe Barbera, was he a director on those two?
Yes. Joe, he ran the creative side, and Bill Hanna he produced it and ran all the business side of it. And Barbera directed him, and he auditioned me, and I'd wander around those offices, and there were the animators. They're drawing the cells, and then they'd throw them out because they were fire hazards.
Do you have any of those? Did you keep any of those?
But nobody collected them. It was like, what do you want? What are you going to do with all that?
Now, Alex Toth is the creator of the Johnny Quest character, the way it looked. Do you have any of his artwork?
Nope, I don't. I have one cell that Joe gave me that's Johnny and Haji and Bandit in a speedboat racing across the water. So there's a background and a foreground. It's quite beautiful. Yeah.
Wow. Boy, those things have appreciated quite a lot.
Yeah.
But how fun that must have been. Today, when you do cartoons, they bring you in one at a time. But back then, was it a group interaction, or did you come in to just read your lines and then leave with nobody else?
No, it was like you say, it was like a play. It was like, be 8 microphones in sort of a semicircle facing a big plate glass window, behind which was the director and all the technicians. And so we would do it like a play. And so you're bouncing off each other, and I think for me that's better, because you can hear it and feel it.
To interact and see the people.
It's live. Yeah. And all these people, many of them came up through radio. So they really had a technique, and I learned a whole other part of the business that there's so many facets to this business, and I was lucky enough to dip a toe in a lot of different
you sure
ones,
were. Now, Mike Rhodes, who was Race Bannon in that, he had a series with Tommy Nolan called Buckskin.
Oh, right.
And I never knew what happened to him. And as I'm doing my homework for you, I go, Mike Rhodes was Race Bannon, which I remember watching it when I was younger. What was he like?
Oh, Mike was great. I mean, he was one of the, I don't know that he did a lot of voice work. I mean, you know more than me, but it seemed like he was more of an actor type like me. And then a lot of the other ones, I mean, I know they had a guy named John Stevenson, I think, played Dr. Quest for like 3 episodes. And then Don Messick replaced him. And I don't know why, they just changed the sound of the voice, and that was that. But, those guys working together. And Mike Rhodes was, he was a perfect Race Bannon.
Well, it was like how William Shatner was the perfect Captain Kirk. He's got that thing, and Adam West, that straight ahead, square jawed type.
And
character.
That's what Mike Rhodes was.
Wow. There's some of the other voices who were in that. You mentioned Janet Waldo and June Foray. You're younger. Did you know what they had been doing?
I watched, Rocky and Bullwinkle was my favorite. And then also a bit Rough and Ready and all the Hanna-Barbera stuff was, I was devoted to watching them. And so when I came over to Hanna-Barbera, it was like, oh my God, it was like going to the Magic Kingdom, and they created a way to do it cheap enough with limited animation.
Eye blink animation, and maybe the lips would move.
Right. But it was brilliant.
It was.
And Johnny Quest sort of changed, that was the first non-comedic, dramatic, animated show that was a primetime show.
You mentioned Rocky and Bullwinkle, Crusader Rabbit with Rags the Tiger.
Yes.
Oh, that was the first.
I love that.
Boy, those were with cliffhangers. And the same sort of humor, although Jay Ward took it up several notches for Rocky and Bullwinkle and made it more adult. But
it's true. You always thought, as a kid, you thought, I'm really pretty hip, watching this stuff. This is pretty. It was like Soupy Sales was here, when he was on TV here. It was for the kids, but it was also that, he was slipping in some adult humor.
And Mel Blanc, you worked with Mel Blanc.
Oh, yeah.
The genius, the man.
He was, he was almost all of the voices that came out of Warner Brothers and the Looney Tunes. He was Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and, Sylvester the Cat and Tweety Bird. And it was like crazy.
Yosemite Sam, he was them all.
Everything.
But wasn't he, and Sinbad Jr., wasn't
yes.
he?
He and I did the show. And, it was just, to watch this guy he could create out of thin air, I gathered, a character for a dog, his dog's voice that had a background and a character and then he could go to another voice and then he'd come back to the dog's voice. And I was like, how do you do that? What part of your brain does that go to? It was just to watch them. They were artists. They were masters of vocal gymnastics and characterization when they, and you realize they're acting without their bodies. They're just doing it with a voice. And it's tricky not to over-ham it and make it, too silly. Those guys and gals were it was such a lesson to me.
And the direction that you were given was just to do it straight ahead as like a kid's voice?
It was my voice, yeah. And it was such such an adventure show. And every week was a different wild, crazy adventure. And I just loved that show. I loved it. I don't think too many of my contemporaries in high school looked at Johnny Quest. So they didn't know I did it. I was sort of under the radar there, but I'd go over to Hanna-Barbera. I had 3 hours worth of homework to do. I'd do it in like an hour, and then I'd just wander around and watch the animators and go watch this, do a session of the Flintstones or a session of the Jetsons.
You never did a Flintstones?
No, I never did any of those shows, but I'd go and watch them and just try and learn how, Alan Reed and all those people. I was just like, oh my God.
And that was a big prime time hit too, the Flintstones.
Oh my gosh,
It was the Honeymooners.
Yeah, it was the Honeymooners, exactly.
And speaking of Honeymooners, you played Jackie Gleason's son.
Yes.
And what was the great one like?
He was the great one. I was a huge Jackie Gleason fan. Growing up, prior to the latchkey term, I was a latchkey kid. I just watched one show after another after I got home from school, or I'd stay home sick. And the Honeymooners was, they'd run one after the other, and it was brilliant because here was a guy who was threatening his wife and screaming and yelling at his wife, and he was borderline abuse, and yet you loved him because he never would hurt her, but he would just Alice, and it was a brilliant characterization. And then I'd watch his show that was really vaudeville, the Jackie Gleason show, which he did in Miami, and it was he was very special. He always, he was always throwing out little sort of advice. He was always over tip. I said, probably they're an actor and need the extra dough, but if you don't, they'll say you're a cheap bastard, and you'll have a bad rap. And so I said, okay, you got it, Jackie.
He was in that film with Bob Hope. It's not one of their best films, but to have the two giants like that together. Now, in your book, which I love, in fact, I'm going to
yes,
hold it up right here. This is a funny book. it's also going to make you cry. It's so good. It really is. And the artwork on the front, this is the same artist who did Animal House.
Yes, he did the poster for Animal House. It's Rick Meyerowitz. And we sort of simulated that, you know, as all the background characters are different characters that I've played in my career and different parts that I've played. And I just, you know, I wanted it to be set a tone that it's going to be lighter, it's fun, you're going to enjoy it, and it'll be a lark.
And the format that you used is interesting because I just got it. So I had to do my homework for you.
Right.
And I said, I don't have time to read it. But so I got the Audible.
Oh, good. Okay.
And I'm walking the dog and I'm just got my earbuds in and I'm laughing. And people are going, watch out for that guy on the other side of the street. But the transitions that you use, they're brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank
you are performing in the book, and it's terrific. So many people don't do that.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're telling stories, and it's like you just want to engage people, and you know, some moments were more serious than others, and some were bigger lessons where, you know, I made mistakes in my life and in my career, and I wanted to recount
businessman,
those.
you don't want to be investing in the National Lampoon.
No. I mean, you know, that didn't work out as well as we'd hoped. It kind of broke my heart. You know, I love the Lampoon, and there was a point where we had investors that put up the money. They said, you can buy the stock. It needs to be revitalized, and I can get you the money, $5 million, and then to revitalize it, put it back in the TV and movie business and back into publication. And unfortunately, the partners that came in were not of the same mind, and it didn't work out. It just broke my heart because the Lampoon, the culture in America needs a comic magazine, a humor magazine that allows us to make fun of the bigger they are, you know,
Sure.
and to poke fun at the trends that are happening in our country. As we go, that's what the Lampoon always did.
Well, going into it, I'm sure you thought, boy, it's a great brand, and it is. It's so successful. But as you started going through the books, after you had acquired it, didn't you find out that, gee, they're in the red already?
They sold everything off, and you know, used that money for other purposes, and so it was one of those things. It was at my sort of entree into the business world, away from Hollywood and publishing, and we met people that weren't too honest or too nice, and it was like, wow, you know, this is a cutthroat world out there, and but you know, we did the best we could, and you know, patched it together, but boy, I was finally happy to come to the end of it for myself, to get back to Hollywood and get back to acting and directing, because it kept me away, and I was around people that I really didn't like being around, and they weren't nice, and they weren't nice to me, and it was like, yeah, life's too short.
Well, when the movie was done, that was a surprise for the studio Universal and also everybody else, because I think the budget was only about $2.5 million or something like that, and John Landis had only done a couple of smaller films, and you were cast in that role. They wanted you to be one of the nerdy fraternity brothers. And you said, no fucking way.
I won't be in this movie without, I won't play one of the Omegas. No, they wouldn't let me audition. I met casting guy, he called me back. I met the director, and my hair was kind of long because I'd done, you know, some Westerns and things. And he said, now he's a cowboy or a surfer. He's not preppy. And I begged a studio exec that I had done a movie for the year before, and I said, just let me come in and audition. And if I tank, that's fine. I can live with that. But I got to get a shot. So he gave me a shot, and I got in, and I improvised with Peter Rieger, who played Boone in the movie. And we really started rolling and hitting it off, and the dialogue was great. And then we'd embellish a little bit here and there and play off each other. And we had Ivan Reitman and John Landis and the studio executives and Maddie Simmons and Doug Kinney just in hysterics. And Kinney founded the Lampoon. So I got cast that way, but it was my first comedy, you know, and the studio.
You don't think Leave It to Beaver was a comedy?
Oh, you played? No, I was totally straight. But the studio hated Animal House. They did not want to make it. It was a third of the lowest budgeted film they made that year. You know, that's all we got. And every step of the way, they tried to stop it, or you know, cut this out, or cut budgets, or just they kept raising the bar of things to make it harder for us to make the movie. And the producers were just, you know, Ivan would figure a way around it, and you know, you only have 100 extras. Well, for the parade scene, we needed like 300 or 400 people. So Ivan raffled off tickets for people to show up in costume for the parade, so they could shoot the big wide shot. There were 500 people who came there, because he offered them a chance to win a giant television. I think he had 2 or 3 of them. So for $500 or $600, he invested. He got 500 or 600 people to show up. But they realized those people. The assistant director said, "You better shoot the big stuff by lunch, because after lunch everybody's going to be gone." And then they trickled away, you know, and that was that.
It was shot up in Oregon, so that the studio interference wasn't probably as bad as it might have been.
Well, what they did, I mean, yes, you're right, but they would make rules, like you can't print more than 1 take. So if we're going to shoot your close-up and you did it once, that's it. You get 1 take of that close-up. So what John Landis would do was he'd shoot your close-up and he'd say, "Start over, do it again, do it again, do it again, go again, go again. Yeah, now do it again, that's it, now say this, now say that." So you'd get 3 or 4 takes on one, he'd say, "Cut, print." But it's, you know, we were constantly doing things like that to, you know, and he'd send signals back to the studio. He'd jump out in front of the camera going, you know, "Hey, hi Sid, it's Sid Sheinberg's birthday. Hi Sid, happy birthday." And he would just make them laugh, you know, in the
Well, he is a
room.
funny guy. In
Funny
the
guy.
movies that he's made, it's hard to find, if you name the top 10 funniest movies ever made, he's got 2 or 3 in that list.
Yep, and him and Ivan and Harold Ramis, you know, and Doug Kenny did Caddyshack before he left us. And so it was an amazing thing to be in the middle of that. It was alchemy, you know, the way they all worked together. And to see Ivan, who couldn't come to the premiere of Animal House because he wanted to be a director. He wanted to direct Animal House, in the studio was, "Oh, nope, you directed Cannibal Girls. Nope, you can't direct."
Cannibal Girls. How did Landis land that job?
He was shooting Kentucky Fried Movie for the Zucker brothers. And then the script supervisor was the girlfriend of a studio exec named Sean Daniels. And she said to Sean, "Oh, you got to see this movie. This guy's directing. He's really funny. He really gets comedy." And so they showed him clips of Kentucky Fried Movie. They showed Ned Tannen, the head of the studio, the clips, and he said, "Yeah, he'd be great." And then Ivan was out, you know. But while they all succeeded and got deals at Universal, and they told Ivan, "Yeah, if you ever have anything, show us," you know, after the movie was over. And he said, "No, I'm going off and make my own movie." So he went off and made Meatballs, and couldn't come to the premiere of Animal House because he was shooting with Bill Murray.
Wasn't Bill Murray initially slotted to to be one of the fraternity brothers?
Well, let me think. They wanted Harold
and Danny
Ramis.
too.
Aykroyd was supposed to be D-Day. Chevy was supposed to be Otter, my character. And Harold Ramis was going to be Boone. But Landis said, "No, he's too old." And so he made Ivan go tell Harold, his best friend, you know, that you can.
And Harold was one of the writers too.
Yes,
wasn't he?
yes, and an actor. He was in the Lampoon show, and which, you know, because NBC came to the Lampoon about that time, no, a couple of years before, and said, "Hey, we want to do a show on, you know, on Saturday night if you're interested." And he goes, "No," and then they were doing the Lampoon show, and who was in the audience every night for Lorne Michaels. And he hired Chevy, Billy, Aykroyd, Belushi, I mean, not Aykroyd, Belushi,
Lorraine, I think, was part of
Lorraine
that
and Gilda,
too. Yeah.
and took that entire cast and put it in the show. Smart guy, though.
Oh, yeah, really smart guy. I mean, and the show's still going.
I know.
But I remember when it first went on, I was like, I didn't know any of those people except for Albert Brooks. And I go, Albert Brooks is going to have some funny movies. And he did.
Yes.
Little shorts that he did.
Right.
But that was it wasn't on every Saturday night. It was on like 3.
3 and then a week off.
Then there was something else on, and then we're going, oh no, it's not on
But
this
you
week.
stayed up live.
Yes.
It was 11:30.
You had to.
And you'd pick your bar to go to. But if they had that on, you'd go there. You know, I mean, it was something to do. It was unbelievable. It was such a sea change because Animal House, also Saturday Night Live, was young people making comedy for young people. People our age were making humor for us. And, because at that time it was Bob Hope movies and Rock Hudson and Doris Day movies.
And they were kind of dwindling off, and it's like even AIP with the beach party movies, it's like, it's not quite Animal House.
No. And that crowd, that audience was getting older and we were getting hipper and younger. And the Lampoon spoke to us,
Well, and Belushi too was just like so wonderful in that. And people I know think he was really like that, but this is before he became the megastar. He was so wonderful on Saturday night, but wasn't he sheltered and kept away from the rest of the group to keep from partying while he would fly in from New York to shoot his sequences?
Yes, his wife Judy was, very protective of John, and because Judy was a producer on her own, she worked at the Lampoon. She helped put costumes together and decorate the sets on Animal House. She was there, but she also was there to protect John. So they rented a house. We all stayed at the place called the Roadway Inn, and it was just madness. And Bruce McGill and I, he played D-Day. We rolled away a piano we found in the lobby that they weren't ever using, and put it in his room.
What floor was he on?
He was on the ground floor, and it was an upright, so it was not a baby grand or anything. So. But Judy wanted John not to be near temptation because he was doing Saturday Night Live. He'd fly back to New York Wednesday night, get there Thursday morning. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Saturday night he'd be doing the show. Then they finished at 1. They'd have a party till 4. They'd put him on a plane to get back to Eugene, and then he'd come back to Bruce McGill, and I picked him up a few times, and then we'd take him back to Judy. And get him ready for work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and he was very disciplined, and it was before the Blues Brothers, but I think it was the next year he had the #1 hit TV show with Saturday Night Live, the #1 hit movie with Animal House. This is '78, and then the Blues Brothers album was the #1 album. So I mean, it was this amazing amount of success, just popularity, and I think. It kind of crushed him,
Well, I can imagine that would be hard to live with all that. So, and he'd been working as a working actor with Second City and just came as a huge welcome to this new exciting world of a superstar before superstars were.
I know. And we just, and he couldn't have been nicer. He couldn't have been more supportive of me and everyone in the show, and he and I became really close and good friends. And he, I thought, he might be a snooty New York star coming off Saturday Night Live. Not that. He was a Chicago Second City improv actor, and he just, if he liked what you were doing, that was great, Tim, that was great. So he really helped me have the confidence to do the right, the things that I wanted to do in that movie.
Well, you've helped us have a great show. We're out of time, but will you come back and join us again?
I'd love to. That'd be my pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Prior to doing Animal House, so I had to work. So I came out of Animal House, went into some TV shows and stuff. So I wasn't really, and I lived out deep in Malibu, the mountains. So I wasn't really in on what was happening. And I remember it opened the first weekend. It was not #1 movie, maybe #2, because Universal didn't open it a lot of theaters. Then they had to add theaters. The second week, it made more money, and then the third week, more theaters, more money, and it just kept growing and growing, which is not the way movies do. They lose 50% usually week to week. It just kept growing and growing, and more theaters, and stayed #1. And then I remember seeing the Time magazine cover of John Belushi on our cover, and I said, I think we got something here.